Previously on Talkin Badgers, seeing who's going to be a backup center to Jake Renfro, that backup center battle. Keep in mind, Jake Renfro missed basically 2 full years of football during his career. He was fully healthy a year ago, but there's always a chance. And these backup center snaps at Platteville have not been very clean. There have been some issues snapping the ball in Platteville. It's something to monitor who gets that backup center spot. Yes, it is Talkin Badgers, powered by BadgerNotes.com. I am your host, Kedrick Stumbris. You can find me on Blue Sky and the website formerly known as Twitter at Kedrick Stumbris. If you have not yet rated, reviewed, subscribed, or followed the podcast, subscribe to the podcast for free on YouTube, youtube.com/@TalkinBadgers. Do all those things. Do what the buttons are begging you to do. Really helps support the show so you get notified right away when you find out that maybe I jinxed it. Maybe I jinxed it. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that's exactly a thing. But we did mention on the show not very many days ago that the backup center battle was something to monitor. And monitor we did. And now monitor, here we are as Jake Renfro limped off of the practice field in Platteville on Thursday before an injury update arrived on Friday this week that Jake Renfro is week to week. The starting center for the Wisconsin Badgers football team is week to week with a lower body injury suffered during practice. The official line for a player with a history of lower body injuries is that there is no, quote, significant structural damage. And Jake Renfro has not been ruled out for the team's week 1 opener against Miami of Ohio of the MAC. Oh, this could spell disaster for Wisconsin, which is already operating without one of its preferred starters on the offensive line. And we'll get to that a little bit later on in the first half of the show. But where does Wisconsin go from here? And why is this week-to-week injury so significant? It's because week-to-week, if that is the official designation, there's very little certainty to go forward with for Wisconsin, for a group that has needed all of the reps it can get to gel together very quickly, particularly given one of those preferred starters being gone and the new starter in its place, in Kevin Haywood's place, only arriving here in the fall for camp. Jake Renfro, in his history of injuries, he missed 2 full years of football, tore his ACL in camp at Cincinnati just ahead of the 2022 football season, missed that entire season. And then with further lower body injuries in 2023, after Jake Renfro arrived on campus, with basically Luke Fickell bringing him over from Cincy and saying, come on over and be the starting center for my football team. Jake Renfro misses the entire regular season, starts 1 game, that being the ReliaQuest Bowl. And that's it. Then 2024, Renfro is basically, despite the offense as a whole taking a step back, I think that's fair to say, taking a step back in 2024 compared to 2023, Renfro was probably the biggest improvement on that side of the ball. Of course, plenty of discourse was had at the time regarding Tanner Bortolini, his snaps, and now Tanner Bortolini appears in line to be the starting center of a National Football League team. We'll talk about that a little bit more on tomorrow's show, preview that in a little bit here as well. But a Renfro loss would just be huge because he was a top 3rd center at worst in the Big Ten a season ago. He's a preseason honoree on the Remington Award watch list, awarded to the nation's top center in college football. Tyler Biadasz won that in 2019, the Wisconsin Badger alum. Per Pro Football Focus, Jake Renfro is the 4th highest graded center returning in the Big Ten this season. Also, per Pro Football Focus grades, he was tied for the 5th best run blocking grade in the Big Ten in 2015. Or in 2015, in 2024, that is. In 2015, Jake Renfro would have been not that old. But the 5th best mark in the Big Ten for a run blocker. And he's no slouch in the passing game either. Among draft-eligible interior linemen a season ago, Jake Renfro had the highest pass block win rate among any of those players with 75-plus pass blocking snaps, according to Pro Football Focus. He was 20th overall in that category if you do not filter out for any of these particularly low snap guys. 20th overall among draft-eligible interior offensive linemen in pass blocking success rate among 136 players. Kerry Kadenko looks poised to step into the center role, with him taking those snaps on Friday as Jake Renfro sat out of practice. I'm sitting here. It's 2:30 p.m. on Saturday as I am recording this Saturday, August 9th. We have not yet seen the open practice going down in Platteville this evening, moved up a small window to 6 p.m. for the open scrimmage for fans. But Kerry Kadenko, which there was some trouble snapping the ball among the reserves, I did not see that when I was in Platteville this week, so perhaps it has improved overall, just the snapping difficulties. But when you're already down one of your preferred starters in Kevin Haywood after he tears his ACL in spring ball, Davis Heinzen steps in. And we have talked on this show how it appears Davis Heinzen, the transfer from Western Michigan, is poised to play the starting left tackle role for this football team. I think there are reasons to be skeptical that he can play that position at a high level in the Big Ten. I think he will probably be serviceable. But we talked about that just earlier this week. Look, I'm not publishing a depth chart, but Wisconsin did refer to Billy Edwards Jr. as QB1 in the spring. The line out there with Billy Edwards most often from left to right is Davis Heinzen at tackle, Joe Brunner at left guard, Jake Renfro, Emerson Mandel at right guard, and Riley Mullman at tackle. I think that is a serviceable group, even if you're not quite getting what you want out of the left tackle spot. With Jake Renfro there in the middle, I think you have a really veteran left guard in Joe Brunner who can step up and help. I think you feel very confident if you are Wisconsin about Riley Mullman at tackle on the opposite side of the line. And Emerson Mandel has proved himself very capable for being a very young guy. When you start losing players, though, and then you may have to rely on further depth as the season goes on, as people get hurt, so you have to start mauling guys up front. That leaves bigger questions that while they may not be presenting themselves today, what about after week 6, week 7, 8, 9, 10? And you have a third guy go down. I think there's always this push-pull in practice. And I noted after the practice I was at in Platteville this week that the defensive line is starting to convince me that there is genuine depth there. But when the genuine depth is going up against the offense's reserves, you do have to pause just for the sake of intellectual honesty, intellectual humility, and say, is it the defensive line depth that is shining? Or is it the offensive line depth that there's more significant questions about here? I think there is some genuine depth to this defensive line. And when I had a chance to talk with Ben Barton earlier this week, starting nose tackle for Wisconsin, he gave an answer that gave me some real confidence in why I think there is genuine defensive line depth on this team. I'm going to play that for you now.
This sounds so weird, but I've had to adjust because last season I was playing a lot of snaps, so I would be at practice, and if we had a 60 rep sheet for practice, I was 48 to 50. Now I'm 20 to 25. And I mean, my body feels incredible right now, but I'm also sitting there like, damn, I'm watching this a lot. So it's really, that's kind of a change for me. Granted, you get into the season, and maybe that 8-man rotation where it's all 20 or 25 for the ones, 25 twos, 25 threes, 25 fours, maybe turns into, again, I said 60, 30, 10. And it's really, that's when you start to mold into this concept, because I'm someone who I really want to play first and second, third and short. First down, second down, third and short. I mean, if I'm on the field for third and 11, like, that's going to be a little bit more foreign territory to me. That's why we have guys like Jay and Perk. That's why we have guys come into the inside like Corey, Daryl, all those guys. So I've really enjoyed this depth. I mean, it's helped me. Some I'm adjusting to, but I've really enjoyed it. And last year, I think I played like over 60 snaps our last 5 games. And Coach Vic talked to me, he goes, dude, that's like double what I want you to play. And I'm like, okay, like, obviously I want to be playing all the time, but I'm also not somebody who's going to sit here and say, I need to be in on 3rd and 11. I'm like our biggest defensive player. Like, I shouldn't be in on 3rd and 11. So it really takes adjustment to understanding how detrimental you are to your position at your time and what you're supposed to be doing. So if you're not there to embrace your role, don't try and grab other people's roles.
Again, that's Ben Barton, starting defensive tackle for the Wisconsin Badgers football team. They're talking about the depth on the defensive line and how it's allowing him to play his role, his designated role, and why I am more leaning toward the side that there is some genuine depth on the defensive line, which does give me a little bit of pause to say, okay, maybe if there is, yet another injury on the offensive line, maybe this does not spell disaster. Maybe the reserves on the offensive line that I've seen in practice, where sometimes they get overwhelmed in the few periods that there really is some genuine contact going on. Maybe this is the defense shining through more than it is some struggles with the offense. Ben Barton mentioning there that the practice sets indicate that their plan is for him to play significantly fewer snaps, for him to play very specific kinds of snaps. That's what they're planning for. And of course, as you get, as he mentions, you get further and further into the season, your rotation tightens up a little bit. But the plan seems to be to play him in situational roles, first, second, third, and short, as he mentions, that are more suited to Ben Barton's skill set. That tells me I think the depth here is real. And maybe the offensive line depth has the ability to stand up to the task if it is called upon. But regardless, we are rapidly approaching some dominoes getting tipped over in Madison, where who knows who else is called upon next. I think if there's another interior injury, I think it's probably Ryan Corey. And then you're relying on a good chunk of young or otherwise unproven talent on that offensive line, where Ryan Corey, redshirt freshman, Emerson Mandel, Davis Heinzen, who's never played in the Big Ten before. You're okay. Let's see it. I guess that's in a scenario where Emerson Mandel is still playing at right guard. So I guess that's a scenario where Joe Brunner gets hurt on the left. But regardless, one place where I think there is some depth that is shining through very obviously in Madison, or in Platteville rather, is at wide receiver. And I think there might be some difficulties keeping this young guy off the field. I think there's going to have to be opportunities for one young guy to step up here. We're going to talk about that in just a minute after I tell you a little bit more about what we are getting up to More on the show this week. Tomorrow, we're going to have another one of these looks at the former Wisconsin Badgers now playing in the National Football League. Did a little bit of this last week, talking about the former Wisconsin Badgers in the NFC East and the AFC East. Tomorrow on Sunday, we're going to drop an episode into your feed talking Badgers in the AFC South and the NFC South. After that, on Monday, we'll have an opportunity as the football team returns to Madison to talk with quarterbacks coach Kenny Guyton, along with the quarterbacks themselves. And one of the receivers that it seems quarterbacks are very excited to throw to is one Eugene Hilton. Eugene Hilton, stepping in as a true freshman, arrived to Madison in the spring, has just consistently made flashy plays ever since he arrived. Back in the spring, we saw him make incredible contested catches, correcting for underthrown balls and going getting it into his arms. A guy with enough speed to break up the seam for a long touchdown. Earlier this week in Platteville, I thought the most impressive play of the day on Wednesday was Eugene Hilton high pointing a ball thrown into a little bit of traffic by Danny O'Neill. But the ball was basically placed where only Eugene Hilton could get it because he has that kind of athletic ability that not a lot of other guys on the field have. High pointed it, brought it up, down on the sideline. Really, really, really impressive. But it was not just that catch, and the ball thrown by Danny O'Neill that was with players not alongside quarterback one, Billy Edwards Jr., as I do not publish a depth chart and do not call these reserves. But it's all the other throws that I mentioned from spring that were also just among players not typically on the field when QB1 Billy Edwards Jr. is out there. I think that might have to change. I think given that nearly every time there is a oh wow play from a wide receiver through fall camp thus far, nearly every time it is from Eugene Hilton. I think you just have to do something about that. I think there are just too few unique athletic talents on this team ready to play to not give everyone an opportunity. That's not taking a knock at anybody. That's just, I can't tell you for sure that there's a day one or day two pick in the NFL draft on this football team right now. Now that's going to come out of this team this year. I can't say that for sure. Maybe Rico Hallman is that. But I think if he were definitely that with a bullet, he would have gone and declared for the draft in 2025, not waited until 2026. And so when there's an opportunity where, you might really have some flashy talent here, and I'm not crowning Eugene Hilton, but the early signs are really impressive. I think there is something to be said for you gotta see it. You got to see it live. Maybe you got to see it against Miami of Ohio. Maybe you got to see it against Middle Tennessee. He might just be too good to not try to put out there. And the offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes at Local Media Day had some really solid insight into just what he does well and why he's a guy who's going to have a chance to see the field this year. I'm going to play that audio now.
Eugene, yes, I do think he could get some playing time this year. Just looking at his improvement from the time he first got here to where he is now, really made a lot of strides. And, I think he's got a complete skill set as a receiver, but his real gift right now is that he kind of does some receiver things naturally, things that some other guys may be 2 or 3 or 4 years into their career, and you're still trying to teach them how to run this route or how to make that cut or how to adjust to this ball. He just does them pretty naturally.
His real gift right now is that he kind of does some receiver things naturally. Imagine that from the son of a 4-time Pro Bowler. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought that the son of T.Y. Hilton might do some receiver things naturally? Look, it's not in Jeff Grimes' wheelhouse to play more than 3 wide receivers and to give more than 3 wide receivers a significant amount of options, or to give a quarterback rather more than 3 wide receiver options with some regularity. Jeff Grimes plays a lot of 11 personnel, basically half the time, 51%. Half the time, he has 1 running back, 1 tight end, and 3 wide receivers on the field. If you are projecting out who those might be for Wisconsin, the guys that come up in those top 3 conversations among Jeff Grimes and others are Vinny Anthony, Trutch Kekahuna, and Jaden Ballard. When you potentially rotate in players, because it's not often at all that Jeff Grimes puts out a 4 receiver set. It's not like they're ever playing 10 personnel. There's not a lot of rotating in a 4th guy. It's, sometimes they're playing in 12. Sometimes they're playing some 2-back sets. That's historically true. And I think would make some sense given the plethora of talent you have to set up your backfield, whether it be, K.D. Akamelli as a change of pace back alongside one of the others lining up, whether it be Jackson Aker as an H-back option. But pretty consistently in Jeff Grimes' tenure as an offensive coordinator, between the 3 years he spent at Baylor and the 1 season he spent at Kansas, that 3rd wide receiver on the depth chart, the 3rd wide receiver by catches, has more than double the number of catches as the 4th guy on the roster. Only in 2022 at Baylor was there any significant involvement by a 4th wide receiver in a Jeff Grimes offense. Every other time, there were only 3 guys with double-digit receptions in the wide receiver room under Jeff Grimes. Putting that into context of, what you may have seen in Madison, in the 2 years in the Phil Longo offense, Wisconsin had 6 wide receivers who caught a double-digit number of passes in 2023, and Wisconsin had 5 wide receivers who caught double-digit passes in 2024. Even in 2022, Wisconsin had 4 wide receivers who caught double-digit balls in 2022 in the pre-Longo era. So it is not common for Jeff Grimes to rotate in beyond his top 3. I'm not expecting to see a lot of, despite their talent, I'm not expecting to see a lot of Tyrell Henry. I'm not expecting to see a lot of Eugene Hilton. I think maybe there's a reason to break outside of the mold if you are Jeff Grimes, based on everything you have seen so far from Eugene Hilton. I don't know. We'll see for sure. It's hard to judge some of these things. It's hard to judge just how effective Eugene Hilton can be. It's hard to judge just how effective the offensive line reserves, the defensive line depth really can be based on what we've seen in fall camp, because we have not seen a lot of just, we're going to try to move the ball down the field periods. I am hoping that a week from today, Saturday, August 16th, there's an open practice for the media, and that is labeled as a scrimmage. It's supposed to be open right now. And so hopefully there will be more opportunities to see the Wisconsin Badgers football team just move the ball down the field and play, some good on good. That'd be great. And it would certainly give you more certainty in what your beliefs might be based on what you've seen so far after you see some of these guys actually play football against one another. Like I mentioned earlier, tomorrow we're going to be back in your feed with some Talkin Badgers. Talkin Badgers in the AFC South and the NFC South. If you are still hanging around here, by the way, you should click that subscribe button, particularly if you are watching on YouTube, youtube.com/@TalkinBadgers. There's basically only a third of you who are subscribed. What are we doing here? It's free. Hit that bell so you get notified as soon as we put another episode into your feed. For BadgerNotes.com, I am Kedrick Stumbris. You can find me on the website formerly known as Twitter and on Blue Sky at Kedrick Stumbris. We will be back in your feed tomorrow. And then on Monday, hopefully with some really, really, really great audio from wide receivers coach Kenny Guyton and some of the quarterbacks that we're going to get the opportunity to speak with on Monday in Madison. Until we talk to you all again very soon on Wisconsin.